I can't believe we're winding down on the end of our book already. We're on chapter 16 called Christmas. Right foot first, Joseph said softly. The reader continued. As the familiar words rang out, Joseph and Mary slowly made their way to the manger. My legs were far too weak to support my weight without my sticks, but Kenny's strong grip never loosened, and he practically carried me the whole way. Even so, I was glad I had my shoes on. Our progress was slower than the reader's voice, so we were only halfway towards the front. He quit reading and waited for us to catch up so he could finish the story. When he got to the creche, Kenny helped me sit down on the chair on one side of the manger, and he sat on the other side. The reader continued. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in the manger. A nurse from the pediatrics ward stepped forward and placed the baby in the manger. The other characters entered on cue. Dorothy looked suitably angelic with gauze wings trailed behind her and a wheelchair and a halo over her head. The wise men entered last, 2 in wheelchairs, 1 on braces, carrying gifts that looked suspiciously like decorated jewelry boxes we had made in OT the week before. We had been directed to hold still while Alice sang her solo. Every character except one followed instructions. Jesus kicked his feet and waved his fists at us. Alice's voice rang out confidently from the back of the room. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Her rendition was flawless. Clear, true notes strung together in a necklace of sound, a gift for everyone in the room to wear. The last, Sleep in Heavenly Peace, echoed for several seconds in the silence as visitors, staff, and patients wiped tears from their cheeks. Then thunderous applause broke out. Everyone talked at once, exclaiming how perfect the pageant had been. Miss Ballard rushed forward with my walking sticks, afraid she had let me do too much. Kenny did all the work for me, I said, which was true. The parents of the baby scooped him up from the manger and beamed while others admired him. But the real star that night was Alice. And when she shone brilliantly, except for her 4 roommates, whichever nurses had listened outside the door, no one had known then what a lovely voice she had. She was congratulated and complimented over and over. People asked if she took voice lessons. She blossomed under all the attention, smiling graciously and talking with anyone who approached her. Refreshments were served, and our appetites immediately returned. We drank cranberry punch and stuffed ourselves with Christmas cookies, fruitcake, and candy canes. When the party ended, the 5 of us went back to our room and celebrated by ourselves. Long after the lights were out, we continued to talk and sing and eat. The next day, Miss Ballard told me I could go home for a Christmas visit. You don't sound very happy about it, I said. Well, I'd prefer to keep you at the Sheltering Arms where I can control your activities, she admitted. You've made excellent progress, and you could undo it by getting too tired, or trying to do something you aren't ready for and damaging a muscle. She shrugged, but I don't have the heart to say no to your family. I'll be careful, I promised. I'm much stronger than I was on my very first day. After days of practice with Miss Ballard, I could walk up a step or 2. With luck, I'd be able to make it in the front door of my house on my own. Art will be home for the holidays, I told Miss Ballard. He and Dad plan on making a chair out of their hands and carrying me up and down the stairs so I can use the big bathroom and sleep in my own bed. Miss Ballard clapped her hands over her ears and said she didn't want to know about it until after I was safely back at Sheltering Arms. I was not the only patient in 202 to receive a Christmas pass. Dorothy and Renee were going home too. Shirley's parents and her 2 younger sisters were coming to spend Christmas Day with her. I was glad that she and Alice would have company. 2 days before we were scheduled to leave, Dorothy got pneumonia, and her visit home was canceled. She had trouble breathing, which scared all of us. We knew that if it got worse, she would be moved to a university hospital and put back in an iron lung. When my parents came to get me, my joy was marred by concern that when I returned, Dorothy might be gone. All of my roommates now seemed like sisters, and I desperately wanted Dorothy to get well. And I wanted her to stay at Sheltering Arms with me. This time, my visit went smoothly. I was able to keep my balance in the car. I managed the front steps on my own. Grandpa had tears in his eyes as he held the door open and watched me walk with my sticks, but I knew they were tears of happiness. The only real difficulty was BJ, who was so glad to see me he kept wagging around my ankles. We all worried that I would trip over him, or that he would knock one of my sticks out of my hand. Dad wanted to shut BJ in the basement. If BJ has to go into the basement, I said, I'm going with him. BJ was allowed to stay near me, but I spent a lot of time sitting down just so my dog wouldn't get in trouble. Because I was stronger and able to move more easily, I didn't get so tired on this second visit. I wore my new plaid satin dress and sat in my usual place on the sofa for our Christmas Eve gift exchange. I gave Grandpa, Art, Mother, and Dad fancy Christmas cards I had made in OT. It felt like we were a family again. When it was time to go to bed, Mother carried my walking sticks up the stairs. Art and Dad made the chair out of their hands. I sat down and held onto their necks, and up we went. It worked fine, but I was glad Miss Ballard wasn't there to watch. At the top of the stairs, Mother gave me my sticks, and I walked eagerly into my bedroom. Or was it my own bedroom? I stood in the doorway totally stunned. "Surprise!" Mother said. "Merry Christmas," Dad said. They had completely redecorated my room. The walls and furniture had been painted, and a new white bedspread covered my bed. Ruffled curtains now framed the windows, and a new lamp shone from beside the table. I could barely hide my disappointment. I thought 100 times about my comfortable room with its worn bedspread and familiar furniture. I longed to see it again, and now that room was gone forever. Even the closet was clean. "Wow," I said, trying to act thrilled. The redone bedroom seemed less like my own room than room 202 did, and I fell asleep wondering how Dorothy was. In the morning I decided I liked my new room, and that evening I left reluctantly for the Sheltering Arms. It had been good to be home again, and I'd gotten around fairly well. Still, I knew I had a ways to go before I was well enough to come home for good. For one thing, Dad and Art would not be there all the time to carry me up and down the stairs. I braced myself for bad news as I entered room 202, but much to my relief, Dorothy was sitting up in bed looking well. "Look," she said, the minute I arrived. She held her arm towards me. "My great aunt in Montana sent me a watch." Dorothy's parents were extremely poor, and she had never dreamed that she would have a watch of her own. She sent me a new dress, too," Dorothy said. "As soon as I'm well, I'll get up and I'll wear it." That night, the 5 of us talked long after lights were out. Renee told what she had done at home. Shirley told about the visit from her parents and sisters. "My mom came," Dorothy said. "My brother was on leave from the army. Even Allison had some exciting news. An uncle had come on Christmas Day to visit her." After all of December's festivities, January seemed as dull as last month's newspapers. The days were short, and so were our tempers. Shirley caught a cold and had to stay in bed. Dorothy was over the pneumonia, but her braces didn't fit properly. They were returned and a new pair were ordered. Even with new OT projects and another edition of Clutch, the hospital newsletter, we were bored and restless. Despite blizzards and icy roads, Mother and Dad came every Sunday. One trip, Mother told me she had visited the little kids' wards. "They don't have enough toys for those children," she said. "Little ones can't read to entertain themselves the way that you can." I sensed she was leading up to something, and I was right. "I was thinking," she said, "that you have outgrown many of your toys, and maybe you'd like to donate some of them." "Like what?" I asked. "Your table and chairs, for one thing. You're much too big to fit in those chairs. They're taking up space." I agreed to donate the table and chairs. "And your dolls. You haven't played for dolls in years." "Not my Raggedy's," I said, "and not Marilyn or the storybook dolls, but you can give the rest away." Mother nodded. "What about your books? The little children would love looking at the pictures." I hesitated. I couldn't use the table and chairs if I wanted to, and I didn't mind giving away the dolls as long as I got to keep my favorites, but the books? I felt sorry for the little kids, but there were limits to my generosity. Apparently there are no limits to my mother's. "You haven't read those kitty books in years," she pointed out. "Your health is improving so quickly, and some of the children there are so badly crippled." She made me feel like a selfish one. "I want to keep my Raggedy Ann books," I said. "Fine," she said, "but I'm packing up the rest." I wanted to keep my other books too, but I didn't have the nerve to say so. How could I complain about giving away Donkey Donkey when I hadn't looked at it in 5 years? The next Sunday the card bulged with my belongings. In addition to dolls, books, and the table and chairs, Mother brought every good toy in condition that I hadn't played with in recent memory. There were balls, crayons, stuffed animals, games. She even brought my doll buggy, the one that I used to push Raggedy Ann in. "Some little girl who can't yet walk alone might be able to walk by holding onto your buggy," Mom said. I wanted to protest, but I couldn't dispute the facts. I was too big for all these things. Most of the kids in the children's ward were far worse than I am. Mother had a wonderful time handing out all the things to the youngsters in the children's ward. Then, glowing with pride, she told everyone it was all my idea. Although my parents set a generous example, I never got any pleasure from watching the little kids use my toys. Every time I saw my doll buggy or my maple table and chairs, I thought of home and how uncomplicated life used to be. When I saw a boy reading Donkey Donkey, I fought the urge to grab it from him and hide it underneath my bed. All right. So tell me what happened in this chapter. How do you feel in your heart, and what thoughts do you have in your head?